guys, I am here with a project using the December Kitaholic Kit, and this is going to be a little 6x8 layout. I have this photo of Artie cuddled up in bed on a Sunday morning, and I've got this pretty cut file which I thought I would use. I want to use the papers in the kit to back this cut file, but I also want to do a little bit on the background before I do that. So I'm putting down some gesso on this page so that I can add a bit of watercolour and give it a little bit of a gentle soft colour to sort of rest on, I guess. So I'm just going to let that dry. I helped it along a little bit with my heat tool. And now I'm getting my watercolours out and I'm going to create a sort of, this looks orange, but when it dries, it will be more of a soft peachy corally colour. So that's what I'm going for. I'm learning that sort of the ways of my own watercolours, they're all a little bit different. But when I put these ones onto white gesso, I think some of the pigment in the gesso actually sort of makes the watercolours dry even lighter than they otherwise would. So I know that about them, so I work with that and help it inform how much of the colour that I actually put onto the page and things like that. So now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow as well, because the papers that I'm going to use from the kit are going to be mostly pinks and yellows, but it's going to be that warm corally pink. So I'm just blending some colours here and working with that. It's funny because when you put the gesso onto the page, it does buckle a little bit, which is totally fine with me. It's part of the process, but it does kind of change the way that the paint moves along the page. Like it will pull in certain areas because of where the paper is kind of bent. So that affects it in some ways, which is fun. It's part of the process, like I say. So these are the papers from the kit that I'm going to use. And I also just chose a piece of plain cardstock, coloured cardstock, which it's the same one that I cut the cut file out of, and I'm going to use the reverse side of that as well, just because it blends in with these papers from the kit. I'm just being a bit careful because this paper has got some really cool cut apart pieces on the back, so I'm trying to cut in a way that means that I can still use the ones that I want to that are on the other side. So I've got this yellow and I'm going to use that for the central petals. I'm not actually going to do the ones that are in the very middle because they're going to get covered by the photo. So I'm just going to do this row here, this little ring, and then I'm going to use a different paper for each of the consecutive layers. So I'm having a go at doing this. This is probably one of the first times I've actually backed a cut file. I've always wanted to, but I sort of never got around to it. I don't know, but I'm getting to the stage where I'm getting a bit more adventurous for me with my scrapbooking, and I really like the way that these projects look when I see other people do them, and I just really wanted to give it a go myself, which is the long-winded way of saying that I'm still learning. So what I did with this one is I outlined the shape that I wanted on the front of the paper and then erased it, and then I quickly realised that it's better to outline, like do your cut line, the lines you want to cut around, on the wrong side of the paper, and then you don't have to erase them. So I learned that as part of this process, and so that's what my watercolor looks like. And now the cut file is all backed, and I really like the way that those colors graduate. I think they're really pretty. So now I've got some little scraps of paper out of my scrap bin, and this is some crepe paper, and it's got a kind of a pearly gold sheen to it, so I'm putting a little layer of that behind my cut file. And in a minute I'm also going to grab some yellow tissue paper, like some pale creamy yellow tissue paper, and I'm going to do a layer of that as well, because I basically just want this to feel really soft and textured. And so I want to create a base that this cut file can stand out on, and in that way kind of show off the beautiful papers that are in the kit. So I'm sort of basically creating those layers here. I scrunched up the paper because that makes it crinkly and adds to that textured feel and that softness. And I'm going to just work out what I want to do with the rest of this. 6x8, it can be a challenging size because it is so small. I find it a good challenge, but it can be tricky to work out how you want to place your embellishments on there, particularly if they're not little. So I had quite a play with this to try and make it work, and it was really fun to it's like a little puzzle really. So you can see I actually stitched those pieces down with my sewing machine, and now I just want to put a little bit of a mount on my photo because it needs to pop up a little bit more off the background. So first I'm going to put some tissue paper on, and I thought that would be enough, but when I laid it on top, it didn't create enough contrast. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to trim it down a little bit, and then I'm going to grab some white cardstock and I will stick this just on top of that. And that little tissue paper layer is still really nice on there. Again, more softness. I'm all for that. But yeah, it just wasn't quite enough. So the white cardstock is going down, and then that will help the photo just stand out against all of those layers there that are happening in behind it. So I'll just trim that down with my scissors. And all the while I'm thinking about how I want to embellish this further. So I'm just playing with these die cuts that came with the kit, which are so pretty. There's just so much loveliness going on in there because there's all those beautiful pinks and wood grains, and a lot of them are about like home, which is certainly what a lot of us are scrapbooking about at the moment. So yeah, it's really nice. I loved the sentiment on that piece there that said, "This is everything I could have ever wanted," because it certainly is. Snuggling in bed on a Sunday morning with my kiddo, listening to an audiobook, it's pretty great. But the piece was a little bit big, so I ended up putting that aside, and I actually grabbed the die cuts that came with the November kit. And I love being able to mix and match kits. It's so good. And this die cut pack had so many in it. I used stacks in my November projects, but I still have a bunch left over. So what I'm doing is I'm going through and picking out the ones that I think tone in with the colours that I have going on this page. So that kind of coral and the pink and the yellow. And I'm grabbing out anything that matches in with those. So there's some lovely mustard and ochre kind of colours and some coral. And I'm creating a little floral frame for part of the photo, and I've sort of tucked them, you can see, in and around. This is them glued down now, and I really like the way that they frame that picture. So these foam alphas came in the kit for this month, for December, and as you can see, they go perfectly with the papers. So I just want to call this one Yes, because they're quite big, these alphas, which is beautiful, and I don't want to let them overpower the page, and because they are that nice size, you can do quite a small title and it still stands out. So I'm just going to call it Yes. I couldn't 100% decide where I wanted to put it, and then I sort of gently put it here, and then I always forget this, that whenever you put an alpha or a sticker onto a photo, it sticks much more firmly and quickly than it does if you stick it just gently on top of some paper. So once you put it down even lightly on a photo, it's stuck there. And that's fine, because it meant that I didn't faff around with where I ended up putting this title. I accidentally put it there and I was like, well, okay, that's where it is now. And I actually quite like it, so that's fine. I wanted to say a little bit about this picture because I wanted to tell the story of what we were doing, the story we were listening to, and just how happy that moment was for us. So I got out my typewriter and I decided to do some strips of journaling here. Again, this is something that Paige Evans does, and I really love the way that it looks on hers. And I think it's part of the reason she does it is because she often does cut files like this in reasonably detailed backgrounds, and it's a good way of adding journaling to that in a way that makes it kind of both fit in but also stand out, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm just arranging it in a way that I think will look good. I tore down the sides, so the ends of each of the little strips are torn rather than neatly cut. Again, I thought that sort of toned in with the whole crinkly, soft thing that I have going on. But I just wanted it to stand out a little bit more against that background. So I got my white gesso out, and I'm just using my finger to sort of smudge a bit of that on there. And it will just mute down some of the brighter coral in those outer petals, and that will help the journaling sort of stand out a little bit more. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit of journaling space there, I guess, and it's taking a little minute because I'm trying to work it into the grooves of the cut file and make sure it sort of looks reasonably even-ish. I don't want it to look totally even. I want it to look a bit painterly and messy, but I don't want it to be super patchy either. So this is the sort of balance there. This little fine line bottle has got matte medium in it, which is perfect. It does take a bit of squeezing to get it out. It's a little bit thick, but it does work. It does hurt my hands a little bit because my hands get quite painful because of my fibromyalgia, but I can get it out, and it is the better adhesive to use there because you don't get the glossiness of PVA glue, so it's worth the effort. And now I'm just grabbing a few little enamel dots out of my stash. These are old ones, and I just wanted to use those to add a little bit of extra detail around the place. And that, oh yeah, that's right, I'm going to add a few little little splatters of colour shine as well, which makes it like slightly messier than the enamel dots. And when you mix enamel dots with splatters, I think it's a good combo. I think it they complement each other really nicely. So I've got 2 different colours. I can't remember if I used both of them in the end. This is like a peachy colour, which matches the watercolour that I've got in the background. And yes, so this is that blush one. I think this is probably the colour that I use the most, this blush pink. So I'm doing a tiny bit of that as well. Not a lot, just a little tiny bit. And that is the kind of the last thing that I'm doing on this page, I think. Although I did this like yesterday. I can't remember what I did. Oh man, time is messing with my brain at the moment. Yeah, masked it off with paper. So I'm just taking that off, and yes, now it's done. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you like this one. I love it. I really like all the details, and I like that I got to merge the 2 kits from November and December from Kitaholic. Make sure you check out Kitaholic Kits. They're awesome. And yeah, I'll see you again really soon. Bye.